remember your message. Getting your message across in your articles is very, 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 very important, because that means that you will have a better chance of getting your work into high impact factor journals and passing successfully through peer review. So with that in mind, I'm now going to introduce you to one of my favorite papers of all time. This one, 10 Simple Rules for Better Figures, published in PLOS Computational Biology in 2014. If you haven't seen it, do download it. It's absolutely fantastic, because this paper, as the title suggests, provides us with 10 simple rules for making better figures, for creating effective data presentations. And the first rule, rule number 1, is know your audience. I might be writing a paper for a specialized medical audience. If that's my research area, I might be presenting the same data, as you can see here, leading causes of cancer deaths, to a more general audience, to an audience of ordinary people, to a lay audience, for example. Who are your audience? Because often how you present your data will be different depending upon your target audience. Don't forget, before you start to write, you need to have a message. Yes, that comes from your data, of course, your message, your audience, and the structure of your writing. So knowing our audience is very important. Rule number 2 is identifying that message. I sound like I'm repeating myself, but it's important to push these areas home. Your message is the key aspect of your research paper. That's what people are reading your research paper to learn about. And so having a clear message is absolutely critical. Getting it across in your figures is also very, very important. Don't forget that most people will interact initially with the images in your research paper. So rule number 1, know your audience. Rule number 2, identify your message. Rule number 3, adapt to the medium. Now, if you're making a figure for presentation at a research conference, that might be quite a different kind of figure to the kind of figure that you would put into a paper, into a piece of primary research. You may have more screen, you may have more space, you may have more time to explain your figures depending upon the medium. And I would always recommend make more figures than you need for your publications, because you can always use those figures somewhere. You can put them into the supplement, you can use them for your departmental presentations, you can use them for conference presentations, you can even use them in other articles. But adapting to your medium, to your presentation medium, is also very important. Captions are not optional. Rule number 4, we've talked about that already. Your figure captions have to be stand-alone. Of course, most people will interact with your figures individually on their phones. They won't read the rest of the paper. They need to have all of the information in that figure caption to understand what you're talking about. A great example of this is the way that Nature journals tell authors to put figure captions together. If you haven't seen that, go grab a copy of Nature Communications or Nature Medicine or Nature Geology, Nature Genetics. Have a look at how figure captions are formatted in those publications. Very, very, very good example. Be careful about your software too. Rule number 5. When I was a PhD student working as a geologist, I was told, oh, you should be using this particular kind of software. No, make sure that you are using software to make your figures that you are happy with, that you know how to use, and that will make for you a consistent style of figures. It's very important that as you build up your oeuvre, as we say, your body of research over time as a researcher, that the figures, for example, that you create look the same. So people will look at your paper and they'll say, ah, that's a Gareth Dyke paper. I recognize the style. You build up a style, you build up a brand, as a researcher, and you do that by being happy about how you make your figures. Very important. Don't be swayed by other colleagues who may be better at designing figures using particular kinds of software. Be careful about what you use. And rule number 6 from my favorite paper of all time is using your color effectively. Of course, it may be the case that you're publishing your work in a journal that still prints issues. I know there are some of those journals out there still in the world where actually a printed issue will appear in a university library. So if you're going for one of those journals, of course, what your final figures look like is important. Not everybody will have access to a PDF version. How you use color, how you get your message across, how you communicate that message is very important. So color palettes, the different colors that you use, have a look at our aje.com blog, aje.cn/ARC. We have a lot of author resources in this area, helping you to pick colors for your research data presentations that help you to get your message across. And rule number 7, don't be misleading. That's not ethical. Of course, there's always a huge temptation when presenting your data to an audience to massage that data a little bit, or to present that data in a certain way so that you appear to be saying something that you're actually not. Have a look at this example. Have a look at how different my histograms look if I'm looking at disk area versus looking at disk radius. It could be misleading. You could be demonstrating to your readers more of a variation in your data than you actually are. So that's rule number 7, be honest, don't mislead. And rule number 8, don't be confusing. You don't want too much junk in your figures. Have a look at these examples on the slide. In the first example, of course, nice colorful figure, but quite confusing. Very difficult for me to see what's going on with those 7 data series. Whereas on the right-hand side, on the far side of the screen, it's not in color, but you can see a lot more information much more easily about what's happening in those data distributions. So rule number 8, avoiding junk. Rule number 9, my favorite. I'm not a designer. I'm not very good at drawing. I'm not very good at making beautiful looking figures, but I am good at getting my message across. So your message is more important than having a beautiful, fantastic, amazing looking figure in many cases. Of course, that's because your message is what you're selling to your journal. That's what's going to help you to get your paper published. That's what's going to help you to get your article through the peer review process. So rule number 9, message over beauty. Rule number 10, again, use a tool that works for you. Don't be swayed by others into using software that you're not happy with. A tool that works for you will help you to develop a clear brand, will help you to build a reputation as an effective writing and publishing researcher.